What is this old, dirty place? Seriously, you have no taste in picking a restaurant. I thought the exterior was bad enough, but this is just disappointing. The menu isn't impressive either. Why did you choose such a shabby place for a celebration? I just want to go home. I was looking forward to a fancy dinner with my wealthy in-laws. At their harsh words, Will's temple twitched. He must have been really offended by their comments. Right after the couple complained, Will, who was usually gentle, yelled in a deep, menacing voice that echoed through the restaurant. "Then leave. I won't serve people like you." "Excuse me, what's gotten into you all of a sudden?" Mary, who had been silent until now, widened her eyes at Will's outburst. Will couldn't stand Mary's attitude, especially since she betrayed David, whom she had been dating for years, and switched to Joseph because of his better education and income. However, it was another woman who would deal with Mary, who still dared to defy Will. "I am Sarah Thomas, a 57-year-old housewife. Before getting married, I was a high school teacher. I had actually wanted to continue working after marriage, but when Will proposed, he said, 'When we get married, can you take care of the home? I'll work hard and support us.' After much thought, I decided to retire early to fulfill Will's wish for a warm family. After getting married, I would have 2 or 3 children and devote myself to raising them. Dreaming of a happy family, I became a homemaker. We were blessed with 2 boys. I wanted to raise them both to be kind and good children without favoritism. However, with our first son, Joseph, I became overly nervous as a first-time parent. People around us expected, 'You're a teacher's child, so you'll get a good education,' which led to frequent lessons and constant studying. Perhaps because of that, Joseph became a quiet child who rarely smiled. On the other hand, our second son, David, born 3 years later, grew up more freely as we had become more experienced parents. When I tried to teach David like his older brother, he would cheerfully approach me, saying, 'Let's play.' I felt a difference between the brothers, but I chalked it up to their unique personalities. However, as they grew into adults, I faced a new concern as a parent. This was about 5 years ago. Our family consisted of my husband, myself, and David. One Sunday afternoon, after graduating from college, Joseph had moved out but came back home with his fiancée. "Dad, Mom, I'd like to introduce you. This is my fiancée, Mary Anderson." "Nice to meet you. I'm Mary Anderson." The woman introduced as Mary seemed quiet and reserved. However, she felt strangely familiar to me. Oh, that's right. At that moment, David came down from upstairs, and the moment he saw Mary's face, he exclaimed, "Mary, why?" David turned pale. Seeing Mary's lack of reaction, he looked shocked and went back upstairs. It clicked for me at that moment. I remembered seeing David walking with a girl in town when he was in high school. The girl he was with back then wore little makeup and looked a lot like Mary. From what David told me recently, he had been with his high school girlfriend until quite recently. Could it be that Mary is that girlfriend? Today, I had informed David that Joseph would be bringing his fiancée. However, he never imagined it would be his own girlfriend. More importantly, did Joseph know about this? I wanted to ask, but I decided not to cause a scene and kept quiet. Then, Joseph made a shocking statement. "David has always been clumsy. While he's daydreaming, all the important things come to me." "What, Joseph, did you know?" I couldn't believe my ears as Joseph proudly looked down on David. Even Mary had a faint, defiant smile. Then Mary looked at me and mockingly said, "Actually, I was dating David until recently, but one day during a date, we ran into Joseph and he offered to treat us. As we talked, I realized Joseph went to a better university and was more my type. How could they talk so brazenly, as if evaluating my 2 sons right in front of me?" I clenched my fists in anger. Just as I was about to respond, Joseph stepped in to defend Mary. "Come on, Mom. I understand why you're angry, but I fell for Mary at first sight. So it's just that we brothers competed for one girl, and I won. Mary did nothing wrong." Joseph had always been like that. Whenever he envied something David had, he would use any means to make it his own. Then, once he got it, he would boldly claim in front of us that he deserved it because he was superior in every way. If I ever tried to comfort or defend David, Joseph would accuse me of being a bad parent for showing favoritism. But this time, it's different. Seeing David's humiliating expression earlier, I couldn't just ignore it. I stood up and started towards David's room upstairs. But Will grabbed my arm to stop me. "Wait, Sarah, let him be for a while." "Yeah, right. At his age, it's pathetic if his parents comfort him every time he has a heartbreak." Joseph mistakenly thought Will was taking his side. But that wasn't the case. Will always viewed both sons equally. I genuinely wanted to support both my sons equally. However, I couldn't tolerate Joseph's condescending attitude. How should I deal with Joseph and David from now on? As I struggled with this worry, the situation took an unexpected turn. Joseph didn't invite David to the wedding. We felt uneasy about attending, but we couldn't refuse, given the presence of the in-laws and relatives. Throughout the ceremony, I kept wondering how David was spending his time alone. I couldn't bring myself to truly celebrate. I just wanted to go home quickly. But when we returned, David was gone. His room was empty, with only a note left behind. "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry for worrying you. I'm so angry with myself for being so pathetic. That's why I've decided to leave home and live on my own from now on." David left without consulting anyone. Crushed by heartbreak, he had quit his job and left home in silence. How will he survive from now on? Worried sick, I collapsed in tears right there. "David, you are not a pathetic person at all. It's all my fault for not being able to help you. It might be too late for regrets now." Will gently patted my back, comforting me. "David is not a child anymore. Let's quietly watch over him." "Yes," I answered, still facing away, head down. 5 years have passed since then. Joseph and Mary don't have children yet, and they never visit or contact us, seemingly too busy. At our house, Will is set to retire at the end of this year. Though he plans to be rehired, we decided to celebrate his retirement and 60th birthday with a New Year's meal. We also wanted the eldest son and his wife to attend. So I called Joseph, who hadn't contacted us in a long time. Surprisingly, Joseph answered the phone right away. Though his response to the invitation was indifferent, he agreed to attend. As for David, Will had found out where he was over the past 5 years, so I left everything to Will for that day. When the new year arrived, our eldest son and his wife returned home. It had been almost 5 years since I last saw Mary. She knew about David running away from home, so I wondered how she would act when she returned. Surprisingly, Mary showed up with a casual expression. "Congratulations on your 60th birthday, father-in-law, and thank you for your long service." "Well, thank you." Will awkwardly smiled as she handed him a gift. Had she really changed over the past 5 years? Just as I thought that, Mary's next words left us speechless. "Thanks for inviting us today. Since it's a retirement celebration for a high school teacher, you must have booked a really fancy restaurant, right? After all, the retirement payout is huge." Will and I sighed deeply. It seemed my impression of her changing was mistaken. She likely heard about the high school teacher's retirement and immediately thought of the payout. Still, it was better than her not coming at all, so we headed to the reserved restaurant. On the way, Joseph asked curiously, "What? Didn't you invite David? Don't tell me he's still too heartbroken to show up." "Of course not. I just thought it would be more considerate for you two to meet him at the restaurant, so David will join us there directly." Joseph seemed to agree, nodding, but Mary appeared completely indifferent. Women are said to move on quickly, but does she feel no guilt about her betrayal? Lost in thought, we arrived at the reserved restaurant. "We're here. This is the place for tonight's dinner." Pointing to the restaurant in front of us, Joseph and Mary looked up at the building in shock. Mary smirked and said mockingly, "What? Here? This place looks like it's falling apart." "Right. I thought with the retirement payout, we'd go somewhere nicer." "Don't embarrass me in front of Mary, Dad." Just by seeing the exterior, they were so critical. Indeed, the restaurant looked so run down that it was hard to tell if it was still in business. However, Will and I had our reasons for recommending it. Trying to ease the tension, I said, "A restaurant isn't just about its exterior. Inside, they have a delicious menu." "Okay." Will nodded deeply and was the first to enter the restaurant. The eldest son and his wife followed us inside, looking around with a bewildered expression. We were seated by a female staff member at the entrance, but they kept complaining. "What is this old, dirty place? Seriously, you have no taste in picking a restaurant." I thought the exterior was bad enough, but this is just disappointing. The menu isn't impressive either. Why did you choose such a shabby place for a celebration? I just want to go home. I was looking forward to a fancy dinner with my wealthy in-laws. At their harsh words, Will's temple twitched. He must have been really offended by their comments. Right after the couple complained, Will, who was usually gentle, yelled in a deep, menacing voice that echoed through the restaurant, "Then leave. I won't serve people like you." "What? What's gotten into you all of a sudden?" Mary widened her eyes at Will's outburst. Joseph stepped in to help her. "Sorry, Mary. Dad is usually gentle, but he explodes if something bothers him, Dad. Why are you so angry?" Even when Joseph asked, Will remained silent, his anger visible. Then a chef emerged from the kitchen, likely having heard the commotion. "What's going on, Dad? Why are you shouting?" "David." Yes, the chef who appeared was David, busy at work. After high school, David attended culinary school. However, during job hunting, he couldn't find a suitable position as a chef because he was considering marriage. So he took a higher-paying job instead. But after being betrayed by Mary, he quit and restarted his career as a chef. David spent 5 years training at this restaurant and took over from the previous owner a few years ago. By the way, this place is a traditional restaurant with over 100 years of history. When I explained this, Joseph and Mary looked at David in disbelief. Will, glaring at them, proudly spoke up. "Oh, see that. David has trained hard these past 5 years. The previous owner entrusted this traditional restaurant to David. It may look plain outside, but it has a legacy." Will laughed heartily, full of pride. David, looking slightly embarrassed, brought out the food. "It's not a big deal, but I guarantee the taste. Try it, bro." Joseph stared wide-eyed at the dish. The dish looked elegant and delicious. Even Joseph, who had dismissed the menu, took a bite. "This is delicious. Isn't this the dish that's been trending on social media lately?" As Joseph expressed his surprise, customers began to enter the restaurant. We had reserved a table for 5:30 p.m. Slightly early for dinner, so no one else was there yet. By 6 p.m., the restaurant started filling up, and Mary looked surprised. "What? Why are so many young people coming to this old place?" Indeed, there were many college students and women in their 20s. One of them approached the staff. "Excuse me, is the manager, David Thomas, here?" David immediately responded to the shy woman. "Yes, I am David Thomas, the manager." At his words, the group of women let out excited squeals. It seemed they were all fans of David. Joseph watched in bewilderment. What's going on? Oh, Joseph, you just said it yourself. David's cooking has been trending on social media. David uses his account to introduce the restaurant, and his profile clearly states, "I'm David Thomas, the manager." Seeing this, users often flock to the restaurant to meet the chef who creates such amazing dishes. Joseph, feeling jealous of the customers asking David for photos, glared at him. What the hell? Just because you're a good cook, you think you can get all the attention? It's said that men who can do everything skillfully are popular nowadays. Having a skill is essential in these times. Eeks, not for me. Restaurant owners are just small business owners. Men should have secure futures with pensions. Like Joseph, a top-tier company makes him the best man. Will's eyes flashed at Mary, who looked down on David even while he was working hard as a manager. So, that's why you betrayed David? The menacing tone in his voice made Mary's spine tingle. However, strong-willed Mary retorted without hesitation. Yes, David was handsome in high school, so I was proud to date him, but he went to culinary school instead of college. He didn't notice I was losing interest and suddenly proposed after starting his job. Every harsh word pierced my heart. When David graduated and started working, his eyes sparkled with excitement. He never said it aloud, but he was undoubtedly eager to make his longtime girlfriend happy. Yet Mary trampled on David's feelings. Though David returned to the kitchen and pretended not to hear, he likely caught every word given how loudly she spoke. According to Will, after the heartbreak, David worked hard to recover under the strict guidance of the former owner. After overcoming so much, he might have been reminded of the painful past. Was it a mistake to let him meet Mary again? Looking back, I saw Will's expression change as he lost his patience and began to shout. What a woman! I just wanted Joseph and Mary to see how David had gotten back on his feet. But you insult my son repeatedly. I can't let you stay married to Joseph. Get a divorce. What, Dad? Don't say such things. We got married because we love each other. No matter what anyone says, we won't divorce. Though Mary was frightened by Will's voice, she felt emboldened by Joseph's support and continued her disdainful attitude. Joseph, I'm so happy. Marrying you is the best decision I ever made. Even though you're brothers, you're so much more attractive as a man. I'm glad I chose you. I had had enough. I was about to stand up and retort when another woman's shout beat me to it. Mary, you're the worst. Apologize to David. The person who shouted was the female staff member who had shown us to our seats earlier. Who was she? Mary, surprised by the sudden outburst, stood there with her mouth open. What? Who are you? It's rude to suddenly call someone the worst. What do you mean by senpai? Are you saying you're my junior? Who are you? David, hearing the commotion, came out from the kitchen. Nancy, it's okay. It's true that I was inadequate. No way. So, her name is Nancy. It seems like there's something more between her and David, right? Mary smirked, looking between David and the staff member, Nancy. David shook his head slightly and said to Mary with a slightly exasperated look, Don't you remember, she's Nancy Williams, our junior in the brass band by 2 years. Williams, oh right. There was a super plain girl by that name. She was so insignificant that I completely forgot. Mary spoke, indifferent to how her words might hurt Nancy, who was standing right in front of her. Yet Nancy remained unfazed, glaring at Mary. You haven't changed a bit. Since high school, Mary, you've always looked down on me like this. I even considered quitting the club because of you. But David encouraged me, and I was able to stick it out. David was wonderful and admired by all of us juniors. Hearing Nancy's firm words, my earlier irritation began to ease. Mary looked annoyed, as if to say, So what? If you ask me, your attitude towards the customers is terrible, and stop bringing up the past. Yeah, your customer service is terrible. It shows that the manager's training is lacking. As they insulted Nancy, the surrounding area began to buzz. Listening closely, I heard other female customers whispering while looking at Joseph and Mary. What's with those two? They're awful. Especially that woman. Who does she think she is? Realizing they were surrounded by hostile stares, Joseph and Mary began to look uncomfortable. It was inevitable, given that many customers came to see David. Unable to bear it anymore, Mary stood up and tried to leave the restaurant. However, Nancy blocked her way, making her stop. What? Do you still have something to say? Forgive me for being rude, but I can't let you leave until you genuinely apologize. Nancy, who looked so quiet, showed a fierce attitude for David's sake. She grabbed Mary's arm as she tried to force her way out and continued with a terrifying glare. David never said it, but he's been hurt for a long time. Not just by your recent words, Mary, but he endured your cheating with other boys since high school. I also found it painful to watch him suffer. Nancy must have had feelings for David since high school. In fact, those feelings probably continue even now. Mary, caught off guard by the sudden revelation, hastily retorted, "Stupid, what are you saying me? Cheat? That's ridiculous. Stop slandering me." No, I knew too. I knew you were cheating, Mary, but I kept quiet because I believed in you. David's words silenced the room. David, always the faithful type, had turned a blind eye to her betrayal. Considering how much he cherished her, the shock of losing her to his brother must have been enormous. I stood up and asked Mary again. Mary, I'm not here to discuss your past with David. But can you confidently say you will continue to love Joseph faithfully? I worry about the emotional scars David has endured, but Joseph is also my precious son. There's a possibility that Joseph might be betrayed in the future. Joseph, too, questioned Mary with a doubtful look. No way, that can't be true, right? Of course not. Mother-in-law seems to be worried about what William said, but that was just high school stuff, so it doesn't matter. Joseph seemed relieved by her words and nodded slightly. However, I couldn't trust Mary, who spoke haltingly and avoided eye contact. As a mother, what should I do in such a situation? Seeing my troubled expression, Will placed his hand on my shoulder and reassured me. Don't worry, Joseph is a strong guy. Even if something happens between them, they'll handle it themselves. I thought he might be right. Hearing Will's words, Joseph looked like he wanted to say it was none of our business and prepared to leave the restaurant with Mary. He placed a $100 bill on the table and spoke to Will. This is for the food Mary and I ate. We don't need you to pay for us. Then he turned to Nancy. And as for you, Junior, there are a lot of complexities between men and women. Demanding apologies for betrayal is a bit much, don't you think? Despite his words, Joseph's expression remained unusually grim. In reality, Joseph probably still felt uneasy about Mary. He couldn't even look David in the eye. He seemed to realize he had done something wrong but couldn't express it openly. I also worried whether their marriage could truly be a happy one. But as Will said, it was best not to interfere any further. After Joseph and Mary left, David thanked Nancy. Nancy, thank you so much, honestly. I was really upset by what my brother and his wife were saying, but you helped clear my mind. No problem. I was just as upset, so saying that much was only natural. Nancy spoke to David informally, quite different from before. I had a feeling something might be going on between them. Just then, some regular customers spoke to them. Hey, are you two dating already? There's no point in hiding it. We noticed from the videos on social media, we've decided to support you as the Raimaku couple, so keep it up. I was not surprised and felt satisfied with the confirmation. Will, however, looked confused, not fully understanding the conversation. When I whispered an explanation to Will, he smiled warmly and looked at David and Nancy. Seeing that we no longer had to worry about David in either his personal or professional life, Will and I exchanged relieved looks. After that, Will and I enjoyed our time together as a couple. However, a while later, Joseph returned home with a large suitcase. What had happened? Joseph, pale and silent, sat on the living room sofa with his head down. Will suggested leaving him alone for a bit, so we did until Joseph finally spoke. Mom, aren't you going to ask me anything? I've come back because I got divorced. Will and I looked at each other and sighed deeply. I figured it was something like that, so what happened? According to Joseph, a highly skilled new employee had joined his department. This person had graduated from a business school, and at first Joseph looked down on them. However, this new employee quickly surpassed Joseph in performance. As a result, Joseph was transferred to a lower-ranking department and had his salary reduced. Given Mary's high pride, hearing this much explained everything. I could guess what happened next. Joseph suddenly started crying and muttered something even more shocking than I had imagined. When Mary found out my salary was cut, she stopped coming home. She was gone for days, so I went looking for her in town and saw her coming out of a hotel with a man. When I confronted her, she said it was my fault for being useless. In the end, Mary unilaterally decided to divorce him. When Joseph demanded compensation for her infidelity, the man, who seemed wealthy, quickly paid the requested amount. So, you just came crawling back here? Yeah, I was so shocked I couldn't do anything and quit my job. Then I got into horse racing and blew through all the alimony. So, until I find a new job, can I stay here? Joseph's pitiful attempt to gain sympathy made Will furious. Stop being so pathetic. Who would let a coward like you stay here? Get out. Joseph, terrified by Will's yelling, grabbed his belongings and fled. I thought we wouldn't have to worry about him coming back. But less than a week later, Joseph returned home with Mary. Wait a minute, didn't you two get divorced? Why are you back together? Mother-in-law, I'm sorry, please, just help us. Wondering what had happened, I learned that Mary's wealthy affair partner was actually the leader of a dangerous organization. Unaware of this, Mary got scared and tried to break up with him. But he demanded that Joseph return the alimony and that Mary also pay him compensation if she wanted to leave. Hearing the whole story, I replied in an exasperated voice. So, Mary ran back to Joseph for help. Yeah, but I don't have any money, Mom. Please, I'll pay it back over time. Can you lend us the money? Dad has his pension, and if that's not enough, maybe David can help since his restaurant is doing well. Could you ask him for us? Enough. Don't you dare come crawling back here again. Get out. Will's voice echoed through the houses. Normally calm, Will had been increasingly irritable when it came to Joseph. Joseph seemed to think Will wouldn't be home during the weekday, but since Will was retired, he was home more often. Though Will had been rehired, he didn't work every day. Apparently, Joseph feared his father's wrath more than any dangerous organization. With a look of panic, he grabbed Mary's arm and quickly left the house. What are we going to do without the money? Mary protested. Just hurry. Arguing, they disappeared down the street. Later, I found out from Joseph's email that he and Mary had gone to the organization's leader, explaining that they would gradually pay the compensation by working for it and asking for patience. As a result, they were made to work without pay as errand runners for the organization until the debt was settled. Joseph, who once looked down on his brother with pride, and Mary, who judged a man's worth by her own standards, received the perfect punishment for their actions. David, on the other hand, is now dating Nancy with marriage in mind. The restaurant has been beautifully renovated, attracting even more customers. Nancy, it turns out, is the niece of the previous owner and has been working at the restaurant since she graduated from high school. When David started working there, the previous owner admired his character and noticed Nancy's feelings for him. Although the previous owner passed away about a year ago, he likely chose David as the manager, believing David would make Nancy happy. David and Nancy, practically running the restaurant like a married couple, continue to draw regular customers who support the Raimaku couple. Now, Will and I also consider ourselves part of their loyal following. Every parent initially wants to raise their children equally, but as human beings, they grow up differently. Still, as they become adults, their fates depend on their own efforts and attitudes. Now that our children have grown up, all we can do as parents is watch over them. Joseph, having strayed from the right path, must now find a way to live on his own. Meanwhile, David, who has overcome hardships, is working hard. From now on, we will quietly watch over David as he finds happiness with the one he loves.